everyone, this is Michael Park for CreativeCow.net. Have you ever wanted to get that cool glitter effect but didn't want to go through all the mess with the water and the glitter? I mean, that stuff takes weeks to get out of your hair. Well, now you can through the magic of modern technology using Trapcode's particular. Here's what we'll be talking about today. As you can see, we've got a composition with glitter rising from the bottom going up, and if you can see, we've got a depth of field going on and some cool back and forth motion of the particles and some nice highlights on the particles flowing through like they're glittering. So let's get started. First of all, let me delete these and start completely fresh. We're going to have a new composition, and the first thing we want to do is create the particle. So we're going to have a width of 200, a height of 200, square pixels. We're going to call this particle. And here we go. Now what we want to do is add a new layer. Make sure it's comp size. The color really doesn't matter. Go to Effect, Noise and Grain, Fractal Noise. And what we're really going to do is use the fractal noise animated over time and use that to drive our color gradient so you go from the normal color of the particle to the highlight. Let's change a few of these settings. First thing we want to do is change it from basic to turbulent smooth, from soft linear to spline. We're going to invert it to make it brighter. We're going to turn the brightness up, or I'm sorry, down to -20. We're going to scale it up to, I'd say about 400. So that we have a larger scale of the turbulence. We're going to change the complexity from 6 to 2, so you have bigger patches of color. And now we're going to change the evolution over time from 0 at frame 1, and at 5 seconds we're going to change it to 10, so you have an evolution of effectively 2 revolutions per second. And as you can see, you've got some nice dark and white color up here, which we're going to change into our glitter. So now we need to go Effect, Color Correction, Colorama. And what we're doing is we're driving different colors off of the black and white. As you can see with the whole spectrum, it looks kind of interesting now. We want to change this so we have our specific colors that we want. So you change the output cycle, use the preset Solarize Red, and we want to change the colors around a little bit to give us that range of color we want. First thing I'm going to do is make a few more of these red spots. And kind of spread the gradient out a bit. I'm going to change the black to actually a darker red. Looks good. We're going to add a few more of these around to spread the gradient out even further. And now we're going to change this highlight from red to white, and we're going to add some yellow around the edges. Like so. Spread this out a bit. And I want a little brighter or a bigger white highlight in the middle, so I'm going to add another key and spread that out. So now you can see we've got a nice highlight going on here, and if you scroll through, it's mostly dark with splashes of bright highlights. I think I actually want to spread the gradient out a little further so I have a little more highlight going on. So I'm just going to move these out a bit like so. And now we should have a little brighter, some more glitter effects. Let's go ahead and rename this to glitter color. And now we want to basically drive the shape and opacity of this by duplicating the layer, hitting Control D. We're going to rename this layer to glitter shape. And we're going to delete the colorama. Next thing we're going to do is change a few of the fractal noise settings. So we're going to take off the invert and boost the brightness from -20 to 70. And we're going to now create the particle shape by going up and selecting the pen tool, and I'm just going to create a somewhat random geometric shape here. I don't quite like it that skewed, so I'm going to just move this point over a bit. That looks good. and we're going to change the mask to feather out a bit. So go mask, hit M or on your keyboard, or just twirl it down. I'm going to feather it out about 3, and we're going to change the mode on this from normal, and you're not going to see it, but I'm going to go to stencil Luma. And as you can see, what's happened is the stencil Luma has only allowed the mask to cut out the shape below it. And so now we've got our particle here that changes color over time, which is exactly what we want. So now we need to go create a new composition, which will be our main comp, and we're going to call it main comp. And we're going to change the preset to NTSC DV widescreen. 5 seconds is fine. We're going to go layer, new, solid, and this will be our glitter particle layer, so call it glitter particular. Make sure it's comp size and hit OK. Next you want to go to Effect, Trapcode, Particular. And here's where the magic happens. We want to go to our project settings and drag our particle pre-comp in. We can turn off the visibility because we don't actually need it. We just need it to drive the shape instances in particular. And now we basically set up our particular emitter. I'm going to move kind of halfway through so we can see how the changes affect the particles being emitted. The first thing we want to do is to change the amount of particles from 100 to about 1500. The emitter point or type, we're going from point to box. We're going to change the position and bring the emitter all the way down to the bottom because we want the particles to flow upward. We're going to change the direction from uniform to directional, and we're going to change the rotation of the direction so it's 90 degrees upwards. Now we need to change the size of the emitter in the X direction to about 1500, which will distribute it wide. The next thing we want to do is change the Y direction, which in this case is the depth, to about 3000 because we're going to be using depth of field later on. And the last thing we want to do is kind of dial down the Z a little bit to about 25, so it's a little thinner. And as you can see, the particles now are rising up. The next thing we need to do is tell the particular what we want to emit. So instead of the sphere, we want a custom particle, and the layer we want to use is particle. And as you can see, here we go. We got all our custom particles coming up. Uh-oh, there's a problem here. We've got all of them emitting the same color at the same time. It looks a little weird. Not the effect we're going for. It's kind of a pulsing effect, not what we want. The easy way to fix that is change the time sampling from current time to random loop. So now it'll randomly grab a piece of the 5-second loop and apply that to each particle in a random pattern, which is where we get our glitter effect from. Looking pretty good so far. Now we need to adjust a few other settings. I'm going to dial down the size of each particle to 4. I'm going to bring the randomized size up to about 20. And I'm going to change the opacity random to 80, and that looks good. And I'm going to change the transfer mode to normal add over life, and when I twirl down the transfer mode here, what you'll see is I've got this little box, and I can basically do a kind of a downward sweeping motion, which will tell it at the top to add the particles to each other so they're brighter at the bottom, and then as it gets up towards the top, it'll go to a normal mode using just the transparency that the layer itself has. Okay, the last few things we want to do is kind of make the particles dance a little bit on the screen, so we're going to mess with the physics. Physics mode is air. We don't need any gravity. Twirl down air, and we want to change the wind direction for wind X to about 8 for each. 8, 8, 8. And we want to change the turbulence field to affect position 30. And we want to change the scale of 10 to 20. And that should be good. And if we scroll through here, we can see how the particles are kind of going shifting back and forth a little bit, which is what we want. I wouldn't mess with the motion blur, and the last thing I want to do is change the render mode to full render with depth of field. In order to get the depth of field to work, we're going to have to create a camera. So go to Layer, New, Camera. 35mm preset's fine. We're going to twirl down the camera options, turn on depth of field, change the zoom to 1000. You can already see how the particles are starting to blur out a little bit. The focus distance to about 700, and we're going to change the aperture to about 30 to get a little more blur, and there you go. So let's do a quick RAM preview. I'm going to pause so you can see how this looks. Looking pretty good. It's not quite bright enough for me, so what I'm going to do is add a glow to the particle layer. So select your particle layer, go up to Effect, Stylize, Glow, and we're going to change some of these settings. Let's move to the middle so we can see what we're doing here. And what I'm going to do is have the glow based on color channels, but I want the threshold up to about 99.9% because I really only want the real bright layers, or the really bright spots on the glitter to show. I want to change the radius up to 30, and the intensity I'm going to bring all the way up to 5. And as you can see, you're starting getting really bright hot spots there. Maybe I'll go even up to 7. And if you'll take another look at it, I think it's looking pretty good. You can see right here really what this tutorial really shows, that nice gradation in color, like that side of the particles getting hit by light. So let's do another quick RAM preview. And here we go. Nice shimmering effect, looking really good. As you can probably tell, this will be great for all kinds of different effects, from just having particles emit up off a surface, to fountains, to snow, to fairy dust, anything you can think of. This is a really neat effect. Not only that, but the techniques you can use for a lot of different things. The last thing that I would want to mention in this tutorial is this is now rendering out in 8-bit mode. Switch to 32-bit mode, which will allow you to go up beyond the limitation of 255, 255, 255, or absolute white in After Effects. As you can see up there in the info panel, this right now is effectively pure white. And what I want to do is be able to go beyond pure white. So if you come down and hit Alt and then you click again and change it to 32-bit, you get a completely different ability to really blow the whites out and get a really neat effect. So in order to do that, we need to change or add to what we have existing right now. The limitation we have currently is Colorama is only a 8 and 16-bit effect. It won't do 32. The way we can cheat this, though, is we can actually duplicate the layer and add to it. As you can see, we're using the glow, which is a 32-bit effect. We're going above 1 on the RGB scale. If you look at the info panel right here, on some of these we're going well beyond RGB of 1, which is giving us that high dynamic range we're looking for. You can affect the glow, or if you want to, you can just duplicate the glitter layer here and change the mode from normal to add, and this is going to really blow these out. And what you may want to do is come down here and hit T and bring the opacity down to something like 25, and then you can basically affect the amount of glow that way. Or if you want, you can just delete that and use the glow effect to drive the high dynamic range there. So one final RAM preview, and I think we've got it. And there you have it, a nice glitter effect with some nice highlights, some HDR popping out at you. The glow might be a little much for my taste, but hey, let's pretend we're in Vegas. Well, that's all for me for now. Hopefully we'll be coming at you with another new tutorial soon. Until then, take care. God bless.